We now shift over to Class 3A, and we take a look at 3A24, hosted by Connorsville. And this sectional here, some parity in this sectional, although I don't think Jay County necessarily matches up as well with this sectional this year as they did last year. Last year's team had a lot of seniors, a lot of really good athletes at Jay County that put themselves in position to play for a sectional championship. I just think when you look at Jay County this year, they're just not there with the rest this year. It's a young team. It's a team with they're playing about 3 or 4 freshmen, playing massive roles on this team. And then your leading scorer, Hallie Schwieterman, as great of a basketball player as Hallie Schwieterman is, she is just a sophomore. And she's making, at times, sophomore mistakes with Jay County. And I think that's the realistic expectation with Jay County is they're a decent team, but they're not at the level of all these sectional contenders, especially here in 24. I think Connorsville, Yorktown, and Delta are clearly the front runners in the sectional. Hamilton Heights is in a rebuild. Newcastle's not all that special. So you're looking at either Connorsville, Delta, or Yorktown. 2 of the 3 are in the top half of the bracket, which is Yorktown and Connorsville. Connorsville has the bye, and on paper, many would say they are the slight favorites in this sectional. They are a team that went 5-2 in the Eastern Indiana Conference, 15-8 overall. For the Connorsville Spartans, they've played some really good teams, including Greensburg, the Greensburg Pirates. That was one of their conference losses, and then you had a loss at the hands of East Central by 4 points. But Connorsville obviously is a nice team. They're going to defend well. Obviously, that's a keystone of Connorsville basketball is being able to defend at a high level. They also average 28 rebounds per game, and 10 of those being offensive boards. So Connorsville clearly has the athletes to be able to get those second or third chance opportunities. And then they also average 10 steals per game. So they're making a lot of teams make mistakes, and they're making them pay for that. Pretty decent team overall. They do have some balanced offense on this Jay County team, 2 of which are double-figure scorers in Serenity Pennington, the floor general of this team, and then Anaya Bennett at 10.8 points per game. Those are the 2 leading scorers for Connorsville. And rebounds per game, Kendall Bottomley, the freshman power forward, averaging 7 rebounds per game. Pennington also averages 2.8 assists per game and 2.8 steals. So Connorsville, a little bit of a they're not like an incredibly big team per se. So they're not like super big per se, but they're athletic. And so the rebounding numbers do indicate their athleticism per se. This is a team that shoots 44% from the floor, so they shoot at a pretty good rate there. And then from 3, 29%. That's right around average. From 3, they take quite a few threes, so that is to be expected with their 29% shooting. And one player to watch, I mean, obviously Pennington would be one that shoots the ball well at 35% from 3. And then you got the junior for Connorsville, that's Addison Jones, at 26% from 3. She's involved in the perimeter offense as well. So Connorsville will certainly be a team to keep an eye on for this program. Yorktown is one I think could be intriguing in the sectional for the Tigers. They have a player by the name of Louis Sylvester, averaging 14.9 points per game. That is the junior small forward. Alexis Fields averages 7 rebounds. Riley Johnson, the freshman guard, averaging 1.9 assists per game. Olivia Conklin, 2.4 steals per game. It's a team that we talked about this last year when we looked at this sectional. Yorktown was a team that was really kind of building for the future, and now you're starting to see what these young players can do with a full year or 2 under their belt at varsity. And Sylvester clearly is the star of this team. She really makes this team go for the Yorktown Tigers, but they got 2 other players that can get you a dozen points a night at the very least. Johnson, 7 points per game for just a freshman on this team. They also average 28 rebounds per game, so they're right on par with Connorsville in the glass. Steals per game is 10.6, so they are very stout on the defensive side of the ball. But I think the one thing with Yorktown that could be intriguing is the fact they are a very good shooting team from the interior. They don't rely as much from the 3-point line. So Yorktown's a team that's going to be able to be aggressive inside. They're going to want to attack the basket. And this is a team that shoots 48% from 2. So this is something to keep an eye on if you're Connorsville. Is you want to make sure you're contesting their shots and holding them to the perimeter, and also for Connorsville, you want to defend them to one shot. That's something to watch tonight for Yorktown, right? And then for Connorsville, if they were to play a team like Yorktown, is going to have to be to contain their offensive looks inside and force them to take contested shots. Now, one team that could be an intriguing opponent in the sectional is Delta. They are 14-7 on the season. They only lost to Yorktown by a point in the regular season. They are conference rivals. They are, frankly, in the same county, so these two clearly don't like each other. But yet they have not played Connorsville, so it would be an intriguing matchup if Delta and Connorsville were to meet for the championship. Although I want to make sure I correct myself here. So Delta actually split with Yorktown. They lost to them in the regular season by a point. They beat Yorktown by 3 points in the Delaware County Tournament Championship game. So these two teams are no stranger to familiarity with each other. But with Delta, I think the player to watch for them, and they are led by Griffin Knight, who's averaging 16.6 points per game on 36% shooting. If Griffin Knight can perform at a level she's capable of, maybe Delta could be a team to possibly win the sectional. But otherwise, you're probably looking at Connorsville or Yorktown winning the sectional altogether. All right, so for this segment here, we're going to be taking a look at 3A Sectional 22 and Sectional 21. Now, for this one, we're going to combine these two sectionals together because, for all intents and purposes, I don't think 3A22 is anything to write home about other than Norwell and Belmont are probably the only two I would consider to be contenders at this point. 3A Sectional 21, definitely more of a competitive sectional than Sectional 22. So, looking at Sectional 22, Heritage versus New Haven's the first game on Tuesday. Sectional 22. And when you look at Heritage against New Haven, you have two players that stand out for these two teams. Danica Fuller of Heritage has been averaging around 9 points per game this season for Heritage. The senior, generally a softball pitcher for the Patriots. She's a 3 or 4 sport athlete at Heritage. One of the more talented athletes to come through the school. And she's coming off a 28-point performance against these same New Haven Bulldogs last Thursday. 10 of 18 shooting and around 8 rebounds for the Patriots. New Haven, the 3-win New Haven Bulldogs are led by Alana Webb, and I believe she's 4th in the conference in scoring at 15 points per game, and she's coming off a triple-double against the Heritage Patriots Thursday. And when you look at a player like Alana Webb, she's one of those kids that can have one of her big game performances. Like, she can have a night where she's scoring 29, 30, 35 points, get a double-double. Because Alana Webb is probably one of only 2 players that can do that at New Haven. Let's be bluntly clear that New Haven is not a good basketball team. There's a reason why Alana Webb had a triple-double against Heritage, and they only won by 6 points. New Haven is a young team that, frankly, they just don't have the talent to do that other than Alana Webb. So, clearly, if Alana Webb has a good game, New Haven plays for another night. If she doesn't play well, Heritage wins, and their season's over. So, the good thing for Webb is she's only a junior, so she still has 1 more year left at New Haven. But clearly, these two teams are not great teams. As far as the rest of the sectional goes, we expect the Belmont Braves, who won the Northeast State this year, and the Norwell Knights to compete for the sectional. Belmont trailed at the half, and they are down 2 scores at the half against the Norwell Knights. Actually, it might have been 3 scores against Norwell, and then Belmont came back to win by 3 points, 47-44. And Belmont's a team that, obviously, the Blakey girls take up quite a bit of the spotlight. Emily Blakey, Ashley Blakey, and then Marianne Blakey. But Belmont's a team that can have 7, 8 girls that whenever the ball goes to them, they're going to make a play. But Norwell will obviously be a team to keep an eye on. They went to state last year in 3A, and obviously it helped that they had Kennedy Filling, Mackenzie Feast, Dakota Hubble, Annabelle Johnson. The great senior class they had clearly helped Norwell get to that stage. But obviously, this is a team that usually reloads, and you're seeing this again this year. Vanessa Rossform's back and having her best season up to this point at 22 points per game, closing at 1,000 points for her career at Norwell. And then Macy Solfrank is averaging right around 14 points per game for the Norwell Knights. And Solfrank's starting to heat up as of late. So if you're looking for a player that could be an X factor for Norwell's run in the state tournament, Macy Solfrank has to be that X factor for Norwell. Jada Dale can hit some shots as well from three. They got a lot of these intangible guards that can hit threes well, and they're right around shooting 34% from three. They usually shoot the ball really well, and it still continues. This year, obviously, they're not as good shooting the ball this year as last year. Last year's team, they shot around 40%, and it helped that they had Filling and Feast on the team, but this year's team still looking pretty strong. I think the big question for Norwell is going to have to do with their decision-making against the man-to-man defense of Belmont. I think that's the one thing that could hinder Norwell's success against the Braves. But if they can take care of business against the man and they're able to find comfortable routes and be able to comfortably get the ball into the paint, I think Norwell's chances do go up from that point forward. Now, I am saying Norwell and Belmont should play for a sectional title. That said, Marion is a team to not completely overlook. They do have a freshman that's averaging 19 points per game, but Marion is more in the lines of they're a better version of like New Haven and Heritage right now. Like you see New Haven and Heritage, they have one or two girls that are really good, but they're clearly in a rebuild. Marion has a player like that where she's a dominant all-around player at the guard position. But Marion really lacks another complementary guard that can play alongside her. And they're also still a young basketball team that clearly needs to mature. But I think there's a girl at Marion that can score some points and grab the boards. And it can make things a little bit difficult for Norwell. But I think at the end of the day, I like my chances with Norwell Belmont. Again, I have no idea who wins this section altogether. I think Belmont has put themselves in a position where it's very difficult for me to predict this one. In past years, I would have said Norwell would have won this sectional easily. That is not the case this year. And so I think this one could go either way. I'm probably leaning towards Belmont, but it's only by a needle thread here in this one. Now, as far as Section 21 is concerned, this one is much more difficult. Dwayner and Angola, the first game, is going to dictate a lot about what goes on with this matchup with the sectional. And with Angola, the big thing for them is be able to take care of the basketball against the 1-2-2 zone. That is a concern, I would think, for Angola. And not having Lexi Stillman obviously hurts from that standpoint. But they've done a decent job of getting through Lexi Stillman. Now, granted, they've went through their lumps, and they had two brutal losses to Belmont and Warsaw last week. But that was to be expected. They just are not as good as those two teams right now. But do expect Angola to really try to utilize the wing position a little bit more. I do expect them to be a little more reliant in the post this time around with Bailey and Kendall Holman. I think those two will definitely play a huge role in this tournament. I think Angola has to be a little bit careful about settling for threes too much. I just don't think they have the backcourt per se to do so. If it comes down to 3-point shots, I think Angola will probably lose in the sectional. They really don't have the 3-point shooting right now to win themselves a championship. They just don't have that yet. And then the better shooters on the team, they are either too young or they're playing JV, or were playing JV, and will be anticipating a bigger role next year. Right now, I think Angola has to utilize more of their post this year, because the guard play is just a bit inexperienced. I think losing Lexi Stillman is a big blow for that backcourt. Now, as far as the rest of the sectional goes, Concordia, I think the status of Concordia is up in the air. I have no idea what to expect with them. We know that Olivia Bollinger is injured, right? At least from our understanding, we know she's missed the past month because of her fractured right hand, and that's huge because she is averaging 18 points per game. Now, Stella Kaiser has improved since then, and we've seen her step it up, but I just think without the presence of Olivia Bollinger, I do think they are really missing that big game ability that Concordia has had for the past few years. And I think in a matchup where East Noble can cause some problems. They are aggressive with their defensive pressure. They are a team that can overwhelm their guards, and I think the playmaking ability of Avery and Stutz, complementing the David sisters, I think is a huge concern for Concordia. And I think the emergence of Ellie Will as of late, I think makes this a much bigger challenge for a Concordia team that hasn't always been consistent on the defensive side of the ball. So if Bollinger doesn't play, I'm probably going to take East Noble just because I think Concordia really misses that game-changing ability. Now, who I think will win the sectional, I think the Cal is likely the favorite. Not greatly, but I think the Cal is probably the team I feel more comfortable saying is the front runner. They run a zone defense that I think really takes something away from every team. They can take away Dwayner's comfortability of feeding to the post. DeKalb's zone defense clearly overwhelmed Angola in the regular season. The Barons, that zone defense can clearly frustrate the young guards of Garrett and can really just expose their weaknesses. Now, the problem with DeKalb is they are a little bit inconsistent on the offensive side of the ball. They sometimes can move the ball decently well and can knock down shots at a decent rate. They're usually around 30% from three. They can knock down their shots. The issue is DeKalb isn't always efficient at it. And when they don't score and when the offense goes into a famine situation here, they do tend to struggle a lot more when it gets to that situation. And a team like Huntington North can tell you that when DeKalb doesn't move the ball well, they can be exposed. But I think the thing with DeKalb is it doesn't feel like it's just Ashley Kotz and everybody else with DeKalb. It's like Ashley Kotz is the clear floor general of the team, but Abby Harris can play alongside Ashley Kotz. But Abby Harris can also run the offense by herself without needing Ashley Kotz, which I think is very important for Abby Harris's future development here. Grace Feaster has become a nice, reliable three-point shooter on this team. And I think one player that's starting to emerge lately is Ellington Sparkman, a kid that is starting to knock down some shots, really showing some confidence. And I think if you're a DeKalb fan, you got to be really excited about the future of the DeKalb girls basketball. Now knowing that you're going to lose Ashley Kotz after this year, now you have a future in sight for the Barons. And this is a possibility for this team to even win a sectional, something that hasn't happened in 19 years for this program. Now, I do think also the presence of Bree Fordyce inside is going to cause some problems for teams that are a little bit more guard heavy, like say an East Noble or a Garrett's per se. Fordyce could be a player that could be an X factor for the DeKalb Barons. And then you can't rule out Leo per se. Leo with Leah Chappelle being a 14-point per game scorer. She can hit the three decently well. She can get a double-double performance. She is a big-time athlete for Leo. Malia Lape, pretty much a three-point shooter, but she's really good at shooting threes. I think she's around 38% from three. So Lape is obviously a player you have to watch out for when you're guarding the perimeter. And then Kenzie Collins has shown that when Kenzie Collins can utilize her skill sets, she can be a force in the paint and can drive to the basket from high to low post situations. The issue with Leo is I think they're a little bit top heavy with this year's team. And I think with Leo, they are much more dependent on the presence of Leah Chappelle. They're much more dependent on whether or not Collins can make good decisions with the basketball. Because if it comes down to a player not naming Collins, Chappelle, and Lape, I don't feel very strongly about Leo's chances. So the way I assess things with the sectional is I think DeKalb is the favorite, but I do think East Noble has a chance. And I would not even rule out Bishop Dwayner. I think Dwayner is playing really well right now. They're starting to feel good about themselves. And I think if Dwayner can get more consistency out of their backcourt, I think Dwayner is a scary team in the sectional. I think when you look at 3A sectional 20, I think clearly Columbia City on paper has the talent to win the sectional. Now, going into the season, I think a lot of people, including myself, did not think that Columbia City could be able to put themselves in that position of be able to win a sectional championship. We were very concerned about, okay, how do you replace this backcourt that complemented Baxter extremely well? And then on top of the fact, how do you able to become a decent team defending the glass when you lost your top rebounder in Molly Baker? And I'm not sure if Columbia City, prior to the season, I didn't know if they had a player that could really utilize that decently well. Because when you look at Columbia City, they are very much a backcourt heavy team, more so than we have seen in the past few years. And obviously with Addie Baxter, she's a Miss Indiana basketball commit, averaging 24 points per game. She's right around 1,717 career points entering sectional play. I think the emergence of Tora Holler as a shooting guard, I think, is a nice piece for this team, not only for this year, but also for the future for this program. Lainey Zilliot is going to be able to knock down some shots at times for this program, and she can play some defense a little bit. But kids like Olivia Kidd and Claudia Strack, those kids have kind of merged on the scene and slowly and surely developed a decent, cohesive role for this team as the season's gone along. Now, with the schedule they play, I think that certainly helps with the confidence of some of these players because they know that if they can win these big games, they are capable of being able to perform at a high level. It helps the fact that Addie Baxter makes everyone around her better. There are a couple of contenders in this sectional. I don't think Wawasee is in that conversation. If it's against Columbia City, I don't think Wawasee has a chance. They just don't have the guard making ability to slow her down. I just don't think they can slow her down. Kenzie Hockerman, solid player, but Wawasee really needs to defend well, or it's good morning, good afternoon, and good night for Wawasee. But there are probably two teams I look at and say they're probably decent contenders for this sectional, one of which is Northwood, the team that Columbia City drew in the first round. And the big thing for Northwood is they really need Claire Payne to play well in the post. She's averaging around 15, 16 points per game, 11 rebounds. She's a volleyball commit for Appalachian State University. And Claire Payne really makes things go for Northwood. They really need to be able to dominate the glass, and they need to be able to score inside because they are not a fantastic three-point shooting team. They will also need to be able to defend the perimeter and be able to defend the perimeter, not just because of three-point shooting, but defend the perimeter to limit those dribble drive situations that Columbia City likes to do. So if Northwood gets into a track meet with Columbia City, or they get into a situation where Columbia City is just milking a bunch of clock and they're controlling and they're able to get what they want, I think Northwood is in serious trouble. I don't like them as much in terms of the backcourt as I would with Fairfield. I think Fairfield, from the backcourt perspective, would be the better team against Columbia City because you have some of the shot-making ability of Ava Herbert and even from a kid like Michaela Mass, I almost said Madison Jones. Madison Jones is clearly not a guard. She is a forward, but even Madison Jones can make shots from three as well. Madison Jones is a tough kid. She's probably a stat-walking bucket for this team, and she has shown that she is one of the toughest players on the floor for the Fairfield Falcons. And then Herbert is extremely reliable for her playmaking ability, her ability to defend the best player on the opposing team. You need those two players on the floor for Fairfield to be successful. And then you're going to need a third or fourth kid that is going to be able to merge on a given night, whether if it's a Michaela Mass with her three-point shooting in the wing spot, whether if it's Paige Park with her ability to score inside, or if it's a player like a Macy Worthman that could occasionally come off and go off with a decent performance as well. But I think Fairfield, the big thing for them is, can they play consistently for 4 quarters of basketball? That has been an issue in the second half of the season for me. And if they don't get back to that, I think Fairfield's chances of winning this sectional are much slimmer if they don't play consistently well for 4 quarters. Now they've been battle tested, so that will help them in this sectional. They are an experienced team, which will help. I think they're a good team. I think they're a good team that can be a great team if they can show it for 32 minutes of basketball. Excuse me. I almost said 40 minutes. It's 32 minutes of basketball. But at the end of the day, I think as long as Columbia City plays to the level they're capable of, and they don't, quote unquote, get tight in key game situations, I think they'll be okay. I think they can definitely win this sectional. This is definitely a winnable sectional, but it's not a cakewalk. They will have to make sure that they're playing well, and you can't just show up in this sectional. So Columbia City, I think, will be the favorites, but I do not think they are heavy favorites by any stretch. They will need to play good basketball for them to win this sectional.